Hi, I'm Isamaya and welcome to this makeup masterclass series where I'm going to show you how to recreate this very glamorous alien that I did for an editorial with Petra Collins and a Wang. So the first thing to do when you're using foam prosthetics is to prepare them before you apply them to the model. It's called pre-painting. I like to use packs, which is essentially a mix of kind of glue and paint that you basically sponge all over the prosthetic piece before you apply it. If you don't want to buy packs because it can sometimes be a little bit expensive, you can actually create your own version using a mix of acrylic paint and layering it with Prosthetic. That will help seal the paint, and then any other makeup you do over the top won't get absorbed by the foam. There are lots of different glues you can use to apply prosthetics to the skin, but for today I'm going to be using Mastix, which is quite a strong glue. And I'm basically going to begin by just coating the edges with some of the glue like this. You want to be quite careful because the edges of the foam latex can curl. So when you're painting it, just make sure you kind of bend the foam outwards and make sure it doesn't curl in on itself. Just taking care to wipe the piece of latex down and really make sure it feels like flush with the skin. A really good way to hide latex pieces and latex ears is to work with your hairstylist and take little bits of hair that you can actually stick down in front of the ear, for example. If you can't fix a piece of hair in front of the prosthetic, then you can use a different kind of glue, one called Prosthetic, to effectively create texture between the piece of foam and the skin. So you can take a little cotton bud like that, dip it into the Prosthetic, and basically just dab it like that over the prosthetic and the skin. And the further you bring that texture onto the skin, the more seamless it'll look, because it'll really create a kind of gradual fade from the piece of foam onto the skin. When the glue's dried, you can go in with a powder just to seal it and make sure that there's no stickiness for when you continue with the makeup. And now to seal that little bit of hair, I'm just going to take some double-sided tape, fix it onto the seam like that, and then fixing the hair over it. So now that I've applied both ears, I'm going to remove the eyebrows, and I'm going to do that using a bit of Pritt stick and my handy hard toothbrush. So I'm just going to push this Pritt stick, or you can use mastic, or you can use Prosthetic, and then drag the brush through just to make sure they're separated and really nice and flat. Once you've flattened the eyebrows, you can go in with a little bit of Prosthetic, and that will just help to really seal them. So you just want to drag the Prosthetic cream through the brow. When the glue's dried, you can go in with a really solid colour powder and just press that in to really seal the glue and the brows and get that really nice flat effect. And now you can go back in with your foundation or concealer and just blot out that colour so that it blends in with the rest of the skin. The last touch is just to add a little bit more powder just to finish off. A really good way of blending the eyebrows out is to take your foundation and just really gently kind of smudge a couple of colours of foundation, a shade lighter and also a shade darker than your natural skin tone, and that will almost help to kind of camouflage the seam. Now to add some structure to the face, I'm going to begin with a gold pencil. This is a House Labs pencil, and I'm going to begin working on all of the high points of Gift's face. So for example, I'm going to draw the shape of her Cupid's bow in gold and around her lip line, and also the bottom of her lip, around the edge of her nose, right down the middle of her face. And then I'm gonna take the gold and I'm gonna go over the brow area in one line and around her eyes. Now I'm gonna follow her cheekbone in a straight line and then down like this, and even up onto the ear. And now I'm going to take a colour that's a couple of shades darker than that gold and blend out all of the edges of the gold to create a kind of 3D effect. So this time I'm going to use Babylon, which is a colour from a House Labs Love palette. And I'm going to go into the eyebrow like this, just underneath the gold. So once you've mapped out those high points, you can begin by colouring the rest of the face. So I'm going to use this really lovely steel bluey pigment. And I'm going to add some blue into her lips. A little bit just around the nose. And then of course I'm going to add some blue into her ears as well. Now I'm going to start working with a stencil, and I've mixed up two different solutions here. One is a very bright gold and one is a pigment that has this kind of two-tone red and blue in, because we have the red of her skin and then we have the blue of her eyes, and that should really bring the whole look together really nicely. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stipple in the bright gold on all of the high points and then blend them out to the kind of bluey red, and that will integrate it really well into her skin. So the easiest thing to do is to take your stencil and basically to just lay it very carefully across the face like this. Make sure that you don't overload your sponge with product. I'm going to very gently sponge on the stencil like this, and then going to take the other colour and I'm going to do it around the low light areas. And then when you remove that stencil, you have a really beautiful outline and pattern. I'm just going to add a little bit of texture just on the chin. And then I might do a little bit just on Gift's collarbones. To add a little bit more definition to all of those lovely patterns you've created, I'm going to take a dark brown pencil now, and I'm just going to really carefully go in between some of the lines, which will just help to bring out those flecks of gold and make them really stand out. And now for the final touches, I'm just going to add some lip gloss to Gift's lips to give it a really lovely kind of oil slick lip look. And I'm also going to add a little bit of lip gloss onto Gift's eyelids, just in the middle, that really lovely kind of reptilian vibe. And then I like to add some jewellery as a finishing touch, because I think it's really important once you've created a character, you always ask yourself, what more could I do to it? How could I improve it? How could I take this character a step further? And I feel like integrating a little bit of jewellery makes it feel a little bit more human. So I'm going to put some hoops in her ears. And I'm literally just going to pierce straight through the foam, like that. Maybe hang some fab pearly jewellery there too. And so now I'm going to ask the hairstylist to jump in, and she's going to integrate the gold and some of the patterns into the hair, again, just to tie the character up and make it all feel really cohesive.
Okay, so now that the makeup's finished, I'm just going to use some double-sided tape just to stick down the final waves around the face. Now I'm going to take the same gold that we used for the makeup and just pick up some of the high points in the hairstyle. Again, just to give it a more seamless finish. And this just really exaggerates the waves in the hair as well. Okay, and then now just to add to the reptilian vibe, I'm going to add a layer of gel just to give it a slick finish and like a layer of shine.
So that was my recreation of the Petra Collins editorial on a weng, and I showed you how to apply, prep and paint prosthetics and then create these highlights and contours using stencils and body paint. Hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to comment and let me know what else you'd like to see.